Shout out to the person who thought we were being dead serious in our Zeppelin 4 album theory.
Well, I don't think we'll have that issue with Physical Graffiti unless graffiti has some weird terminology behind it. Actually, graffiti is from the ancient Egyptian term of graffiti.
Ask and you shall receive. Led Zeppelin's Physical Graffiti.
Whenever you meet somebody who's listened to Led Zeppelin before, they're like, "Oh, I never listened to Physical Graffiti. It's like the best album they've ever put out, man." It is a good album, but my favorite is still Led Zeppelin 2. There also was a lot of throwaway songs, I guess you could say, that were kind of put onto the track after. They recorded 8 of the songs, and then the rest were put on from recordings from different time frames.
I actually looked up is because Jimmy Page has a time machine, and he actually went forward into the modern day, and he's like, shit, they're just like loading up these track lists and shit because that's how you make money nowadays.
Yeah.
So that fucking fart noise that I made the other day, put it on the album. Put it on that bitch. I'm like the Zeppelin equivalent of those Rush fans that are like Rush forever but have only listened to Tom Sawyer and Limelight. No, I did listen to Zeppelin 1 and Zeppelin 4, and the reason I was interested to check this one out is because it's more experimental than your typical Led Zeppelin album. Without further bullshit, Custard Pie. Given as this album was advertised as a departure from the traditional sound, I was surprised to hear the similarities.
Yeah, I think it really came off strong with the rock and roll sound that they've always pioneered. But yeah, they did have a different style on what they brought, especially with Jimmy Page's guitar tone, I think.
The biggest difference I noticed was with Robert Plant's voice. It had a little bit more grit to it than past Zeppelin albums. And while most simpletons would whine about the difficult to understand lyrics, I, on the other hand, as a music historian, recognize that Robert Plant actually invented mumble rap on this song.
For the solos, Jimmy Page uses the wah-wah effects. He uses it with the ARP synthesizer. Came with a new sound.
Musician gear terminology.
Very, very, very fancy.
Instrumentally, the blues vibe to start the album, along with the showcase of some of the greatest musicians ever with numerous solos, is a great way to start the album, so I give it a 7.
I gave it a 7.5.
Bonham sets the tone nicely with a nice hi-hat work, followed by a nice riff from Jimmy Page. At this point, we're starting to hear a slight deviation from the traditional sound with a more modern melody, but it's still paired with the same feel that we're used to from Zeppelin.
Jimmy Page came up with the beginning riff. I think it's one of the coolest and most notable riffs he's ever come up with. It's something that really stands out to me, and I don't know if it's for other fans. Just the way he plays it and the repetition of it, I think, is excellent. John Bonham, as always, kicks ass to start it off.
Highlight for me was the outro. Not only with the cool riff from Page, but the change in guitar tone to complete the sound. The song picks up with the energy they left off on with track 1 and is another solid contribution to the track list. So I give it another 7.
I give it an 8.
Speaking of guitar tone, love the flange on the intro. Sounds like an edgy version of a SpongeBob song.
The first thing seeing this is the 11-minute runtime, which is insane. If I'm not mistaken, the longest song. Jimmy Page's guitar tone really, really pulls you into the song. John Paul Jones is definitely underrated, I think, as a musician, let alone a bass player.
Every bass player is underrated in the book of Metalhead.
They are. John Mune, where are you?
Bonham fucking blew my eardrums out when he came in with that jump scare from the kick drum.
Oh, yeah.
Then they take a rest from the traditional song structure to give the intro some breathing room, which I talked about in the past, how short term, some people may not like that since it has such a slow build up, which leads to the long runtime you're talking about. For a song experience, it means so much more and gives so much more feeling to a song. And being a prog elitist, I also appreciate the long runtime, so I give it an 8.
I'm going to go with 7.5.
Don't they have an album called Houses of the Holy?
Yes, they do. It's actually the album before this one, and they wanted to put this on Houses of the Holy. They didn't think it really fit with the track list, so they just plopped it on this one. This song is about what it feels like to perform for people.
The song has a little more of a hard rock feel to it as opposed to earlier tracks with that heavy blues influence. The vocal melody by Plant stood out to me the most. This is one of probably my favorite vocal melody on the record. The fading echoed riff also gives it a nice ending, so I give it a 7.5.
I would agree, vocally it is nice, so I give it a 7.
We see our first guest vocalist on Trampled Underfoot with Young Thug singing most of the song.
What? the fuck?
Again, the core foundation of the song sticks with the classic Zeppelin sound, but with a heavy use of keyboards by John Paul Jones, giving it a cool new twist.
I think it's awesome that John Paul Jones can pull out the synth when he's not on the bass. Fun fact, he did a lot of the mixing at the end. And there was times near the end of their career where everybody else in the band would be plastered. John Paul Jones would be in the studio like, all right, I'm finishing the album so we can get this out and make money off of it. The lyrics are based off a blues song, Terraplane Blues, and this is also one of Robert Plant's favorite songs. But I do also really do enjoy the beginning, the synth noise. It's just awesome, and then John Bonham brings it all together with the drum fill. I give this one an 8.
Are we already on your favorite Zeppelin song of all time? It's the detail in the song that displays from the flange at the very beginning to the subtle brass and string parts in certain sections that keep you engaged the whole 8-minute runtime. I'm not sure if it's because of the remastered version, but the production also sounds unusually clean and polished for a Led Zeppelin song. It sounds like something that could have come out the last 20 years. That also carries over to the song itself, which is what separated Zeppelin from their peers in the first place. So I give this one a 9.
Oh boy.
Floor's all yours.
Led Zeppelin is one of my favorite bands of all time. Top 5 easily, maybe top 3 depending on what day of the year it is, how I'm feeling. Kashmir is. I feel like Kashmir is not the best they have to offer, and it pains me when I see people that say it's like the best song.
Where's Daniel UK? Daniel, you out there?
Let me explain it as to why. So the first minute 30, fantastic.
Just kidding. Lol Mayo 69 420. Kashmir is one of the greatest songs ever bestowed upon us by the Lord Jesus Christ himself. I love the name because it reminds me of the panties that your girl wears when she comes over to ride this dick. This song makes me want to say positive things about America inside of a Starbucks on campus at UCLA. Pay no attention to the man shitting all over one of the most iconic rock songs in history. He just emptied out Walter White's entire stock of crystal meth.
I do like how you described it though, and I do agree the production is fantastic for its time. I just wish the song was like 3 minutes long. I spoke my piece, so I give it
10 out of 10.
The atmosphere created by John Paul Jones with the synthesizer and Jimmy Page with his bow, one of the most incredible moments on the album.
It shows fantastic musicianship for John Paul Jones to come off strong with that sound, and then Jimmy Page thinking, let me get the violin bow and play my guitar with it. And it created such a cool, unique sound that most people can't emulate.
The vocal effects on Plant's voice just send you to the moon, and the atmosphere doesn't drop off when the rhythm comes in with Bonham holding the steady beat. For the second song in a row, Zeppelin makes a long song feel like 30 seconds, so I give it a 9.
Give it an 8.5.
Down by the Seaside is the perfect name for this song, with the oscillation of the guitar, the electric piano, and the seaside beat from Bonham, all providing that beachy vibe. Just for the sheer way it captures the seaside vibe and the feel so perfectly, even critics of the song can't deny that.
You can't critically come after them for this song because of just the vibe it brings and the great atmosphere and their ability to really bring the song to life with the title. A 7.
An 8. And I feel like a fucking hobbit right now because this chair is ass, so I need a new one. The slow acoustic build-up at the beginning is a perfect setup for the song describing a tough decision that many of us have to make because we're all rock stars here. Choosing between your career and a significant other.
One of my favorite Led Zeppelin songs of all time. Just the whole atmosphere it brings of the somberness and the sadness of what it's like to choose a path, not knowing where you're going to go, and then when you're actually at the end of it, you look back on it thinking, did I make the right choice? Once again, Jimmy Page nails it with his guitar tone. They never played this on the radio. I remember about 4 months ago in the work truck, somebody called in a request for this song. It's awesome. Blasted it. Full thing uncut.
That's the most boomer sentence I've ever heard anyone under the age of 45 say.
How do you know I'm under 45?
You a vampire? The solo at 2:30 was an interesting change-up from Jimmy Page, whereas we're used to that more rapid-fire and high-energy style. He appropriately delivers a more moody feel for this one. The added touch to take it down and immediately take it back up for the outro solidifies the raw emotion in the song and also having to make that decision. I give it a 7.5.
As being one of my favorites, I give it a 9.
The song is about dodging the draft during Vietnam. This was a throwaway from Zeppelin 4, and while it's certainly a solid Zeppelin song, it's definitely a throwaway.
The song was mostly written by John Paul Jones. You know, even though it is about avoiding the draft, it has an upbeat tone to it.
It sounds a little harsher than I intended it because, as I mentioned, it's still a well-structured Zeppelin song, but on an album filled with so many creative and experimental songs, I'd rather hear more of that than something like this, so I give it a 6.
6.5.
Again, not much in the way of daring experimentation on this one. There are, however, some nice details thrown in, like the reverse guitar chords. The beat is also undeniable, Bonham holding it steady. The vocal effects are interesting with the tape delay drawing in similarities from early Rush, but again, throwaway town. We're in throwaway town still, so I give it a 7.
Bonham's drumming really stood out to me on this song. What do you think?
I think Bonham's drumming should stand out to you on every song, or else you'll be burned at the stake.
That is true. Definitely another throwaway song, of course, but, you know, still a solid piece by them, so I gave it a 7.
Ian Stewart actually played on this one from the Rolling Stones, your favorite band, on an out-of-tune piano with Robert Plant and an acoustic guitar, Jimmy Page on the mandolin.
I didn't know Ian Stewart was on there. I mean, he sounded fine to me. I'm not just going to shit on him because he's from the Rolling Stones. Yeah, again, we're still stuck in throwaway town. We can't get the bus out of there. It's like the SpongeBob episode where he's stuck.
We're at rock bottom.
Give this one a 6.5. Black Country Woman, your favorite on the track, right?
Did I tell you that this was my most ass rating?
No, you didn't.
Oh, that was just a guess?
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, yeah.
Holy shit.
So what are we still doing here?
I don't know. I'm trying to get on the bus to get out.
5. Just end the
Where's the
suffering.
bus? It was cool to see the acoustic. I think, I'll just say quickly, even though, yes, I agree, 5 is a throwaway. Nobody gives him enough credit in his acoustic playing. I know you haven't heard as much in it, but if I could make a compilation of all his acoustic songs and playing, I think you might agree. I think he really nails it on the acoustic.
Well, I agree. I
yeah.
did think the acoustic was definitely interesting, and it gave off vibes similar to Battle of Evermore from Zeppelin 4.
This album is the same, you know, first half strong, second half...
We're out of the hole. I think we're out. The song talks about a groupie and the lifestyle with being a groupie.
I do agree we're out of the hole. This song definitely picks it up in style and musicianship, and it still is a throwaway, but it's not as much of a throwaway as the other ones, I would think.
Sonically, it's a nice return to form for the high energy we got at the beginning half of the album, with one of my favorite Jimmy Page leads on the record in the beginning half. Nice way to end on a high note, so I give it a 7.5.
So I give it a 7.
Overall, even though it is packed with a lot of throwaways, I still think that there are no respects bad songs whatsoever. Songs like Kashmir, Trampled Underfoot, In the Light really pull this album to at least the top half of the Zeppelin discography, in my opinion, still.
Led Zeppelin continues to bring more to the table. Like I said earlier in the video, I think they realized this is our 6th album. We're rich, we're famous. What can we do to make people stay in tune with us? And it was the different sounds, the synthesizers, the bowstring on the guitar. Them being as skillful as they are, they can bring it to the table, whereas like if somebody else tried to do it, it'd probably sound like shit. A solid piece of work by them.
I'd give it a 7.
A solid 7.5, soft 8.